For today's video, I wanted to make myself a balm, which was also a scrub as well. I wanted something which was mainly just for my feet and legs. So I'm going to be using my old vintage jar like I normally do. You've seen me reuse this before on the blog post for things like body creams, body butters. And one of the first things I'm going to be using is castor oil. I love how moisturizing this is. I'll also be mixing it in with shea butter, but this shea butter I've mixed in with some almond oil. And another thing you could use are things like chamomile, dried lavender, but the main thing I'm going to be using is a mixture of lemon balm and peppermint. I've mentioned it before, I've got a pretty big herb garden and it's still growing. Lemon balm is one of the things I use all the time, so I'm going to pick a few branches of that, take off the leaves after they've been washed, dehydrate them. The stalks are just going to go straight into the compost bin, and then once the lemon balm and the peppermint is dry, that's the part where I'm going to start grinding it all up. Once they're dry, I'm just going to take my stone mortar and pestle, pop them all in there and then grind them into a powder. This should take you between 1 and 3 minutes, maybe 5. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, don't worry about it. You could also use a food processor. That's also going to get them quite finely ground up as well. It won't be as fine as a mortar and pestle, but it will do the job just fine if that's all you have. Now that everything's a powder, that's going to get mixed in with some of the oats as well. As you can tell, oats are going to be another one of the ingredients. I really like these because as soon as they end up in with an oil, or if they end up getting soaked, they get so rich and creamy, and they're really nice to use for a scrub. Because I'm going to be using this in a scrub, I'm also going to grind up the oats as well. You could just leave the oats, and then if you left them to sit in the oils that I'm going to add later on, they are going to get very nice and creamy, but I like grinding them up just because then they get more creamy. Now, one thing I do want to mention, because one of the ingredients I'm going to be using are eggshells. This is one of my favourite ingredients to use as an exfoliant, but because people being people and this is the internet, I want to make something very clear. I'm going to be using a small spoon of this into the scrub, but when you use eggshells as an exfoliant, you do not want to just crush it in your hands and call it a day. That is not going to do it. A food processor also won't cut it. A mortar and pestle that has a wooden pestle is not going to cut it either. You're going to need something stone, and you're going to need to keep grinding this until it's indistinguishable from dust. It shouldn't look like sand, it shouldn't look like apricot kernels. This should look and feel like dust, and that's when you know you've got it fine enough to not be so abrasive that it's like an apricot scrub, which can be far too abrasive, and it's very, very easy to overdo it. So use a small amount and don't stop until it looks like dust. After adding eggshells, peppermint, lemon balm, oats, I'm now going to add a little bit of castor oil. After that, I'm also going to use a tiny bit of olive oil and then a mixture of shea butter and almond oil. Now, to be fair, I'm just using these because I like to have the mixture of all of them. You do not need this much creams and oils. You could just use olive oil and call it a day. But I like being a little bit luxurious and bougie, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to melt down the shea butter, wait for that to be a liquid. Once that's a liquid and it's cooled down enough for me to be able to get the glass pot out, I'm going to pour that in and mix it in. So now that you have something that looks like the world's most unappetizing soup, it's pretty much ready. I can add things like lavender or crushed up chamomile, but today I'm just going to be using the lavender, pouring that into my vintage jar and then using it. And one of the reasons I like this, despite how disgusting it looks, is that especially if you're having a shower, you can just turn the shower on. I like using this mainly on my legs and feet as well because it's exfoliating, and especially when you're tired and you just want to boost the circulation. It smells amazing because of all the lavender, the peppermint and the lemon balm. And also it's very, very oily. So you can apply this, scrub it into your skin, and while you're having a shower, it's not going to go anywhere. So with all that warmth from the shower, it's going to sink into the skin. Then you wash it off with your soap, and your skin feels amazing. So for something that looks absolutely revolting, it's actually very, very nice. If you like my content and want to follow me on Patreon, that's where you can find my early content, extra content, and see the thought process behind things like my books, cover designs, videos, and artwork. You can also find me on Instagram, but the best place to follow me and make sure that all my new content is sent directly to you is through my website and the mailing list. On the top right hand corner, you put your name, the email you want your new content to be sent to, and that's it. You're done.